Hey everyone, this is JD Pat Fig. Today I'm going to talk about how to make this pluck sound from Spectrum by Zedd. This is my first tutorial. I'm going to try and do as many of these as I possibly can, matching some sounds that I think are pretty cool. If you want to email me or post a comment and you have a question about a sound from another track or even from this one, I can try and recreate it and show how I did it. So for this one, it's fairly simple as far as like what the sound is and how to make like the basic tone of this thing. The hard part was assigning this macro and figuring out how the envelopes work. There's a filter envelope and a volume envelope, an amplitude envelope. Figure out how those are going to work and how they're going to change over time as this part, the 16-bar part, progresses. So I used two oscillators for this. Both of them are this PWM pulse width modulation waveform or wavetable. The first oscillator I have all the way to the left, which is a pulse with some modulation occurring on the pulse width by assigning LFO 5 to this narrow range of pulse width. In Massive, if you haven't done this, but you can assign these controllers, there's 4 envelopes and 4 LFOs, to all of these parameters that have a box underneath. So you just take it and you drop it right in, and then you can control, by dragging here, you can control the range of modulation. So this is a pulse width modulated oscillator. And if you look at LFO5, I used a triangle wave and a rate about 5 degrees past center, amp about 10-15 degrees past center. And this is an old programming trick, how to create like a PWM synth. If you've ever done PWM strings, it's similar to how this is done. The second oscillator is the same wavetable, but I have it all the way to the right here, which is a saw. And I'm not sure this is doing much. I think it might be, I don't remember why I did that, but if you want to copy it, go ahead. If you want to play around with it and see if it did anything, you can do that. But I think when this is in the right position, all the way in the right, this isn't a PWM anymore. This might be just modulating brightness, essentially, of this sound, but I don't know. I don't remember. I got both of these sent 100% to filter 1, and this is how you control which filter it's sent to. And filter 1 is on low pass 4, which is a 24 dB low pass filter. Now here's where the tricky part came in, and where the hours trying to match come in. If you look, there's a yellow band here and there's a blue band, and what this yellow band tells me is that I have a macro, and the number 1 here shows me I have macro 1 assigned to the cutoff frequency of this sound in this amount of range, and the blue tells me I have an envelope, and the 1 tells me I have envelope 1 assigned in this amount of range. And if you look down at envelope 1, just by looking at this visually, I can see what this is doing, what envelope 1 is doing to the filter. It's starting with a sharp attack, meaning it's going to be brighter and crisper here, and it's going to decay, and you can see it's a fairly slow decay, a fairly fast decay time, down just a little bit lower in cutoff frequency. So that's how you make a pluck. That's essentially what a pluck sound is brighter attack and then decays sort of quickly to a duller sound. Now what these tell me, these assignments, this is again macro 1, is that when I raise macro 1, this initial attack level of the low pass filter, that's going to go up, so it's going to get brighter on the attack side, but the end level here, the decay level, is going to go down, and that's either going to decrease this ultimate decay level where it ends up, or it's going to stay the same, because if you look up here, the cutoff is going to increase. So to counteract that, this ending level is going to decrease, and I'll tell you why I did that. If you listen to his sound, as the filter opens up over the 16 bars, it gets brighter on the front end, but the cutoff level that it ends up on doesn't seem to change that much to me. So in order to do that, I programmed the macro, or I assigned this macro to the decay level to counteract that, in the opposite direction. Then the release, and this release, by the way, only is effective if you have some release on envelope 4, which is the amplitude. This release I increased a little bit with the macro, so the release of the filter is going to be more slow, it's going to go faster, I should say, when I increase macro 1. So in the envelope 4, which is by default the amplitude envelope, I have 2 assignments of macro 1 to the decay time. So this shows me, graphically, that this is going to start at full volume and then decay and die here. So I want that to go a little slower, to the sound to hold on a little bit longer as this increases, this macro 1. And I also increase the release pretty significantly with macro 1. So as I increase this, I hit the keys and I take my fingers off, and there's going to be a longer release. So the sound is going to not only get brighter over time, but it's going to last longer. That's it. And then here's my MIDI. It should be pretty close to the original. I'm sure it's not exact, but it's pretty close. And here is the macro assignment, or I should say the macro automation. I don't know why it's so jarring like this. There are a couple points where I did want it to jump up, but it's not a science, I guess. So when it plays, if you watch macro 1 down here, there the automation kicked in. And if I were then, because Massive doesn't have a good EQ, doesn't have a compressor, and doesn't have great reverb, I use some plugins. This is a Pro-Q where I took down 30 and below, boosted at 80, and cut a little of the mud here. Should have cut more, and then the Pro-C, this compressor, I used it principally as an upward compressor. I wanted to level out the sound to get it, tighter and more of a wall. So I increased the input level here by 4.5 dB and just chopped a little off at the top. It's not compressing too much, but increasing this input level is going to level out the sound so you get a more solid sound. And then I use just a relatively, simple reverb just to give it a little bit of reverb there. So that's it. Hope you like this. Thanks.